Hey, hon.
Yeah, sugar baby.
Hon, come here.
What you want?
Well, I'm hoping you'll help me out with this joke here. I've got 222 jokes to choose from. And so could you just pick a number between 6? Okay.
Lucky number. My favorite number has always been 6.
Number 6. Why didn't the crab donate to charity? He's shellfish.
Try another one. No.
Okay, give me another number. Another number.
6 plus 6 is 12. 12.
What was the goal of the detective duck? To quack the case, of course.
Wah, wah, but I like it.
That one's terrible.
What would Olivia Benson do?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Another Fanboy. I'm your host. My name is Steven, and today I want to talk to you about Madman Comics, issue number 4. This was originally published by Dark Horse Comics back in October of 1994. It was written by Mike Allred, art by Mike Allred, letters by Sean Connaught, and the colorist was Laura Allred. But hey, before we get into all that, I got a couple of things I want to talk about. First off, one of the rewards you get when you come over to my Patreon and sign up for the Just Another Fan Club is that at the $2 level, I will promote something for you on an episode of Just Another Fanboy. Well, I'm not sure why I'm having trouble saying the word well, but our latest patron, a.k.a. Gert, just happened to fall in on that $2 level. So what I wanted to promote is that this particular character streams his video games when he's one of these video game streamers, and he does that over on twitch.tv/HeyOGert. And then you can find highlights of that over on the YouTube channel, which you can find by searching for a.k.a. But you know what? I'm not just going to leave it at that. I'm going to give you the links to both the Twitch and the YouTube channel in the show notes. So go and check that out. a.k.a. playing the video games. You know, I could be a gamer. I've thought about it often, but I have one of those personalities that if I started playing a video game, I would get lost in it, and then my family would never, ever see me again. And I don't know how to put the controller down, or usually when I do, it's because I'm throwing it across the room in absolute rage. The second thing I wanted to talk about was this episode was, did I say was? I meant is, was, I can't stop saying it. Anyway, the episode that you're listening to now, this is going to be the final episode of season number 5 of Just Another Fanboy, meaning that when this episode is over, I'm going on a bit of a break, possibly 4 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean radio silence over here at the Just Another Fanboy. During that time that I'm off, I will be trying to cobble together for you various bonus type shows, whether it's episodes from my other podcasts that I do for my patrons that I want to share with you guys, or maybe pull some stuff out of various other shows and put them together. I don't know. Basically, it's going to be stuff that I don't have to put a lot of work into. Mainly because during the time that I'm going to be off, whether it's 4 weeks, whether it's 6 weeks, whether it's 8 weeks, I haven't quite decided yet. But during that time that I'm off, I am going to be kind of trying to put my focus on this new podcast venture that I am trying out called The Streaming Fool, in which I will be talking about stuff that I'm watching on the various streaming services that I subscribe to. And I lean towards original programming. I've done some episodes already for Only Murders in the Building. I did an episode on Ted Lasso. And next week, starting on Monday, 11/22, you should, if all the stars align, you should get a new episode of The Streaming Fool Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday will be me talking about the first 3 episodes of The Wheel of Time, which all 3 will drop on 11/19, the Friday before, this upcoming Friday. And so I'm gonna watch episode 1. I'll record an episode on it. I'll watch episode 2. I'll record an episode on that. and then I'll watch episode 3 and record an episode on that, and you'll get those Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Well, on Wednesday, the 24th, the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye drop over on Disney+. So you'll get my thoughts on episode 1 and 2 that Thursday and Friday next week. So all next week, Monday through Friday, a new episode of The Streaming Fool every day, 5 days in a row. And then the following weeks, for the time being, I'm just going to be watching as they come out weekly, The Wheel of Time on Fridays and Hawkeye on Wednesdays, and giving you episodes following that. So you'll see. Get over there and subscribe, because it should be a lot of fun. This is stuff that I would normally do over here on Just Another Fanboy, but I've come to find out that there are so many new original programming shows that are showing up on a lot of these streaming services that if I want to talk about them over on Just Another Fanboy, that's all Just Another Fanboy is going to be. And if I'm going to do a podcast that's just about that, I might as well make it an all new podcast. I also want to try to focus a bit on Event or Else during that time as well, because it's been over a month since I've put out a new episode. I've been working very hard on trying to get the next episode out, which is for Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue number 6. But I keep getting distracted from other things. And if I can take something off my plate for a few weeks, I'm gonna. And for now, that's going to be Just Another Fanboy. So that doesn't mean don't go anywhere. Stay subscribed. There will be new episodes coming up. There will be bonus episodes and junk like that. But I urge you, if you don't already, subscribe to the Everything or Else feed. Whatever podcast I put out will go over there. The only one that doesn't show up on the Everything or Else feed is the My Other podcast, and that's because that's a patron exclusive. But otherwise, when I do Just Another Fanboy, those episodes go over there. The Streaming Fool episodes go over there. The Event or Else episodes go over there. If once in a blue moon, I finally end up recording and putting out a Steven or Else episode, that will be over there as well. So if you're just subscribing to Everything or Else, literally you're getting everything that I'm putting out every week. Okay, wow. Sorry about that, folks. I got interrupted there for a moment. You know, the porch caught fire. It was a blazing inferno. I had to go out and fight that for a bit. I used a combination of water balloons and seltzer, you know, the old seltzer bottles that you would see in the old black and white movies, like Three Stooges. And I got that sucker put out. That's not actually true at all. But hey, we're here to talk about Madman Comics. I got all my announcements out of the way at this point. So let's talk about this issue of Madman Comics. So this issue is titled Waning of the Weird. And this is a continuation of where we left off with the last issue number 3. Frank and Joe had taken up this offer to go on a cruise line with a carnival that we met in the original Madman trilogy. And at some point during this cruise, people started getting murdered, and Frank was accused of these murders. He was locked up, but by the end of the previous issue, he was being let out of his cell because somebody else had been murdered while he was locked up. And that's where we come into this issue. So Dr. Flem is there with him. At one point, Frank had tried to escape, and he placed a call for help to Dr. Flem, and Flem shows up. So we learn right away. So basically, this guy who was killed, the purser on the ship, his body was mutilated. He was skinned. Body parts are missing. We learn that what had happened to Frank in the previous issue also happened to Dr. Flem, which is at some point somebody in a trench coat and a hat, a mysterious dark figure, out of the blue shows up and tried to dump blood on Dr. Flem. Same thing happened to Frank in the last issue. This dude in a trench coat and a scarf and a hat and goggles so you couldn't make out his face. He dumps blood on Frank, and that's why Frank is accused of the murders, because he is caught covered in blood. Well, in this case, the captain was just around the corner. He was close enough that he witnessed this happening to Dr. Flem, but far enough away that this dude in the freaking trench coat and hat and scarf didn't notice him there. Otherwise, he probably would not have done this. And so they start to think to themselves, well, who would do this? What would be the reasoning behind these murders? And Joe brings up, why would somebody skin them? And Frank starts to think, and he realizes the Muscleman from the circus has no skin. And they all decide, well, of course, he's the one that did it. He's either jealous about these folks that he murdered, because the captain says both victims had lovely complexions. And so he's either jealous of them for having beautiful skin, or some other motive that has to do with the fact that the Muscleman has no skin and that these two victims were skinned. And so they decide to go to the guy's room 667, but Dr. Flem talks them into playing it a bit smart. And so what they do is they make an announcement over the ship's PA to tell all the passengers to stay in their cabins until further notice, and that anybody who will be out and about at that point is going to be up to no good. This is, of course, all happening while there's a big storm going on. So they go to room 667, knock on the door. Nobody answers. They take a peek in. Joe is taking the lead on the investigation, and she opens up the door and goes, hello. And the cabin is empty. Frank, in the meantime, he's there with them, but he's standing on the other side of the hall next to cabin 666. And he knew, he's like, I knew it. No, I knew he wouldn't be there. That's, my instinct is telling me that. But then the cabin door to 666 opens, and out walks the Muscleman, and he's carrying a trench coat and goggles. And Frank's like, it's you. And Muscleman says to him, who let you out? And Dr. Flem comes out of the other cabin, and he says, it's him. He's holding the disguise. And Muscleman says, no, you see, and that's when the captain shows up and says, grab him, the killer, don't let him get away. And then Muscleman and Frank each look at each other. They both go, grrr, and then they just start fighting. A lot of this issue is their fight, which starts there outside these cabins and ends up in various places on the ship. They just go all over the place. There's actually kind of a weird moment where Muscleman knocks Frank through a wall made of bricks, which I thought to be kind of odd to be on an ocean liner, why they would have walls made of brick. I don't know. It just seemed kind of weird, but whatever, fine. I'm not going to fault Mike Allred for something like that. Of course, I've never been on an ocean liner. I don't know. And so they're fighting. And while they're fighting, of course, just like all Madman Comics, Frank is, we're getting into a look inside of Frank's mind. We're always getting narration from Frank, and usually it's, we find out at some point that it's stuff that he's jotted down in his journal. But throughout this entire fight, which is very, I'm sure it costs the ocean liner company some bucks, because they break a lot of furniture. They break some doors and some windows and obviously a brick wall at one point. But as it's going on, we have Frank narrating and just talking philosophy. He's really deep into what it would be like to live forever and just existing. And it's a really interesting look into the kind of things that Frank thinks about. At one point he says, because he starts out saying that he doesn't like to fight. He's not a fighter. He says the best way to get into a fight is for it to just happen, so that you don't think about it. Somebody just comes at you and you just start fighting. Because if he had to think about it, he would do whatever he could to try to avoid that fight. He says it's not because he's a coward. He just doesn't like the pain. And that's when he starts talking about living is hard, existing can really hurt, and he just really does hate the pain of getting beat up. Well, for both Frank and Muscleman are really holding their own. And at one point, we learn that Frank is quite the good fighter. Again, we know that he's very agile. We've mentioned before that Frank, if this is your first episode, you really should go back and listen to all the Madman episodes so you kind of understand what's going on with Frank. But in a nutshell, he's a guy that had, at one point, he had died, and his friend Dr. Boyford brought him back to life, gave him the name Frank Einstein for his two big heroes, Frank Sinatra and Albert Einstein. But of course, we know that the two names together make Frankenstein, which is a play on the whole, this is a man who was brought back to life. We learn that after being brought back to life, he suddenly has these uncontrollable, almost psychic abilities. He can read people. When he touches them, a little antenna thing pops out of his head sometimes. He is also extremely agile, and he is very uncomfortable being out among people because he looks dead. His skin is gray and blue. He's got scars and stitching, and he's only found himself to be comfortable around people if he's wearing a full head-to-toe costume featuring an exclamation point, which comes from an old childhood superhero comic that he loved when he was a child, called Mr. Excitement. Now, saying that, he doesn't remember anything about his past, but that's a memory that has come through the fog, a connection with this old comic book superhero, Mr. Excitement. So he wears a costume all the time. Joe has put together different versions of the costume for him because at one point she said that his costume was getting kind of stinky. And at this point in the book, it's an all white costume with the red exclamation bolt on his chest. Anyway, we learn a little bit more. There's another small piece of the puzzle that is put in place in this issue, and that's just the fact that he is an amazing fighter. He seems to know some sort of martial art, possibly. There's a lot of leaping and kicking and very agile dance style fighting. And at one point, Muscleman actually asks him, "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" And Frank's like, I don't know. And then they just continue fighting. The fight ends up taking them into the swimming pool on board ship, where both of them almost drown. They continue fighting until they are up on deck. Matter of fact, they rip through a tennis court net at one point. Frank is on the Muscleman's shoulders, and he's smacking him in the ears, trying to disorient him. And it's then, as his hands, come into contact with Muscleman's head, that he reads him quickly. The little antenna pops out of Frank's head, and he realizes the Muscleman is not the killer, but that Muscleman thinks that Frank is the killer. So earlier in the issue, when the captain and his little assistant dude, whoever was with him, jumped out and said, "It's the killer, get him," both Frank and Muscleman thought that they were being told, "There's the killer, get him." And so they went after each other, thinking that each other was the killer. Well, after smacking him in the head these many times, Muscleman gets really dizzy and he falls off of the deck of the ship into the ocean. Frank grabs a line that just happens to be there with the little hook on it, and he wraps it around his waist, and he dives into the water. He grabs a hold of Muscleman, but he's not able to really pull him to the surface. But then eventually somebody starts pulling on the line and bringing him up, and they bring Muscleman back onto the ship. And it's at that point when Frank tells them, "Muscleman didn't do it. He's innocent. I could feel it. He thinks I am the killer, but I'm not." And Dr. Flem is there to tell Muscleman it's true. Frank's not the killer. Frank also says, "The captain can vouch for me, so let's make a deal and get along. All I ask for is a little warmth for me and Joe." And that's when he realizes Joe's not there. He's like, "Joe, where's Joe?" And that's when he realized Joe has been taken by whomever the real killer is. Frank goes below decks. He finds her sweater on a railing, and he ends up in the bowels of the ship. He finds Joe tied up and gagged, and with her are two of the Bellway brothers. So there are these guys, these acrobats in the circus called the Bellway brothers. Technically, there are three of them, but one of them has two heads. Well, we learn that the two Bellway brothers, who were just regular dudes, they were the ones that killed these two people on the ship, and they harvested their organs. They were making a sacrifice of flesh and organs to a demon by the name of Thad Reno, so that the third Bellway brother that has two heads could each have their own body. They or him, however you want to refer to this two-headed person, they're really kind of upset about this. They're like, we don't want any part of this. What's happened to you two? If Mom were alive, she'd take the belt to you. And that's when we learn that they are actually not the brains behind this operation. They have somebody else that is pushing all the buttons, and he goes by the name of Mr. Mondstadt. Now, if you don't recall, Mr. Mondstadt is way from the original 3-issue black and white Madman trilogy, 3-issue first series. And Frank and Mondstadt had fought on a helicopter which crashed into the circus tent, which is where the circus folk come into this. And well, actually, the helicopter had gone through the tent, crashed into the ocean, and they were never able to recover his body. So they just assumed that Mondstadt was dead. But instead, Mondstadt was alive, and he had somehow discovered or maybe he was saved by this demon, Thad Reno, and he summons him there in the bowels of the ship. And he uses it by saying 3 words, Relte Nosnam Yakag, which are actually the names Hitler, Manson, and Gacy spelled backwards. You know, Adolf Hitler, Charles Manson, John Wayne Gacy. Anyway, the demon Thad Reno shows up, and it's basically just a big lump with a mouth and like 3 tongues and a dozen eyeballs. And Mondstadt wants the demon to take out Frank, but it realizes quickly, it says, I can't. He is one of the 4. I am not empowered to deal with him directly. And Mondstadt's like, fine, then empower me, demon. And the demon's like, that I can do. And Mondstadt grows like 3 times his normal size, and he picks up Frank. Frank punches him in both nostrils, and he asks Joe to distract the demon. Well, Joe has been holding this length of pipe, which she had actually used to knock out the 2 Bellway brothers. Joe's kicking a lot of butt in this issue, and she throws the pipe at one of the demon's eyes, and it bursts the eye open, to which the demon's not too happy about. And it reaches out with its 3 tongues and grabs up the 2 Bellway brothers and Mondstadt, and then escapes in a puff of smoke. And as Frank and Joe are sitting there reeling from this adventure that they've just had, they're a little out of breath, little thrown for a loop, or however the heck you say it. He says, 1 of 4. She says, what's it mean? He says, I don't know. And again, this whole time we've been getting this narration from Frank about living forever, what that would be like to live forever, and really how long forever is. You know, it's like at one point he says something like, 100 million years is a long time, but even that is a short amount of time compared to forever. But as this little part of the book ends, as the creature pops away, we get this one last text box from him that says, and then there's Joe. Forever with her just wouldn't be long enough, because gosh darn it, these two just love each other so much. It's one of the things I love so much about this book, just the love that these two have for each other. I don't know, I dig it so much. There's just not a couple like these two. And so Frank and Joe, along with the last Bellway brothers, the guy with the 2 heads, they come back up to the deck of the ship, where they find the captain and Dr. Flem. He explains to Dr. Flem that it was Mondstadt. Dr. Flem explains to them that Muscleman had found that clothing in his room and was trying to find the owner. And so it looked like somebody was trying to frame him as well. And then Joe looks out over the railing of the ship and sees that they're off the coast of the Wee Isles, is what they call it. The Wee Isles. And Frank says, I've seen this in a dream. And Dr. Flem tells him, I have family here. Would you like to come along for a visit or carry on with the cruise? And then the last panel is them in Dr. Flem's floating car thing. They're flying away from the ship. And Frank says in narration, no worries, living for today and keeping an eye on tomorrow. I bet that's what it's all about. And we're told that next is the blast. So 4 issues in, we've had this, 4 issues into the 3rd series. Again, there were 2 3-issue series before this, Madman and then Madman Adventures. And then this is Madman Comics. And this one was, again, man, they're just a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun, and they also give you a lot to think about. And this particular one gives us a little bit more about who Frank might be, though what they give us is even more confusing. He's one of the 4, whatever that is. So I don't know. And whoever he was in his previous life, maybe they were able to fight really well. And that's why Frank can fight really well now. Or is it just because he suddenly, when he was brought back to life, he suddenly has this super agility almost? Is it just also transferred into his fighting ability? I don't know. But a little more pieces to the puzzle, but they're not really giving us much as far as who Frank might be. I don't remember what happens in the next issue. The Wee Isles, I looked at the cover for the next issue, and that cover is very familiar. It seems that we have Hellboy on the cover. I do remember Hellboy making an appearance in this book at one point, because both of these books were being produced at the same time, Hellboy and Madman, and they were both being published at this time through Dark Horse. So they were, I don't know if they were trying to establish a unified, some type of comic book universe like we have with Marvel or DC, but at least during this series, Madman and Hellboy existed in the same universe for a bit. But yeah, other than that, I don't remember much about this next story. I'm looking forward to it, but I need to stop letting so much time lapse between these episodes, because again, this is one of my top 3 books of all time, and I'm just having a ball going back through and reading these. And I've probably mentioned this on every episode so far, but I know that there's going to come a point here within this here within this Dark Horse series that I had stopped reading. I never completed the Madman Comics series. And then Madman went away for a bit, and it came back being published by Image Comics. And I started reading those books and never finished that series as well. So again, it's one of the reasons I'm so excited about continuing forward with this series, is because I'm looking forward to finally, getting to read some Madman I've never read before. Now, I'm sitting here right now looking at the cover for the next issue number 5, and I'm trying to see if it'll strike any memories. The main thing that we have right down the center of the cover is this dude with a helmet and goggles on that are shooting ray beams out of the goggles, and it's shooting a hole through Frank. But there seems to be, along with, I don't know, it looks like it's putty that's coming out of him, where the eye beams are shooting a hole through him, but there's also like a nut and a bolt. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. That robot dude, now I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. In one of the previous issues, Dr. Flem's helping hands, Warren and Marie, had created this robot version of Madman, of Frank. He doesn't look like Frank. Man, I can't remember his name. It's like Atomic Man or something like that. He's on the cover. Joe's on the cover. The demon Thad Reno with the mini eyes, he's on the cover. Someone who looks like Dr. Flem, but it must be because he mentions at the end of this issue that he has relatives on the island. This must be one of his relatives, because it kind of looks like Dr. Flem, but not quite. He's on the cover with 2 robots. And then there's a question mark that has Hellboy's face in it. So yeah, other than the fact that I remember Hellboy being in one of these issues, there's nothing about this cover that's striking any memories with me. So I may have to read this issue here pretty quick, but dang it, I'm enjoying these books. They're so much fun. They give you a lot to think about when it comes to philosophy and life and love and relationships. And then it's just beautiful to look at the same time. These are just such great books. If you haven't read Madman, I just can't recommend them enough. If you're reading along with me, I would love to know. Send me an email at feedback@justanotherfanboy.com or leave a comment on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere that I post about the episodes. Beyond that, folks, that's the episode. Hey, do me a favor. Are you listening to this episode through Apple Podcasts right now? If so, would you please rate the show for me? Apple Podcasts has this thing where you can pick a star, 1 through 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, and you can rate the show. You can also leave a review if you want, but you don't have to. You used to have to. I think if you rated it, you had to leave a review, but nowadays you don't have to do that. Just rate it. I'm trying to get more ratings, folks. The more ratings I get on Apple Podcasts, the higher up in the algorithm I get. I've been stuck at 6 ratings for like a year and a half. And I feel like you need at least 25 to start showing up on lists and stuff. So you would be doing me a huge favor if you would just go out there on the Apple Podcasts, if you're listening to this through Apple Podcasts, and just rate the show. You got it right there in front of you right now. If you're listening to it on your phone, for example, just stop what you're doing. Boom. Tap a star. Tippity tap it. 1 through 5, 5 being the best. Even if you hate this show, give it a rating. Even if it's 1. I prefer no ones, but just give me a rating. I'd appreciate it. Hey, so this was the last episode of the season. Again, you're going to get a couple of bonus episodes over the next few weeks, but as far as any just real hardcore episodes, you're going to have to wait a month or so before that. But, if you don't want to be separated from me for that long, I invite you to join me over at the Streaming Fool, where I will be. Sometimes I just can't talk, folks. My brain just goes, nope, we're not going to make that word sound the way it's supposed to. My brain thinks it's 2 people. Anyway, what was I talking about? The Streaming Fool. Get over there. Listen to me talk about the shows that I watch over on them streaming services. Next week, folks, it's going to be all Wheel of Time and Hawkeye. Monday, episode 1 of the Wheel of Time. Tuesday, episode 2 of the Wheel of Time. Wednesday, episode 3 of the Wheel of Time. Thursday, episode 1 of Hawkeye. And Friday, episode 2 of Hawkeye. You want to be in on that, folks? www.thestreamingfool.com. You can get it on YouTube. There's really nothing to watch, though. I do make the videos. You can watch them. They do stuff. There's a little movement, but it's really there just for you to listen to. You can get them on Apple Podcasts. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on Google Podcasts. You can get it on Audacity. You can get it on, not on Audacity. That's what I use to record. Good Lord, Stephen. You can get it on Audible, Amazon Music, pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts, you can get the Streaming Fool. But again, I urge you to just subscribe to the Everything or Else feed. Again, it's out there on all them places too, except YouTube. You subscribe to Everything or Else, you're going to get everything I do, except for my other podcast, which is over at the Patreon, which you can join for just $1 a month, and you can start listening to my other podcast, which is where I go and talk about other things. Comics, books, TV, movies, what I had for breakfast that day. But that's it, folks. That's my episode. I will see you soon, just not over here on Just Another Fanboy, going on hiatus. Join me in all these other places. Until then, folks, my name is Steven, and I'm just another fanboy. Be nice to each other. Do it.
Bye-bye, Daddy. Bye-bye, Daddy.
Good job.